kind of thought that's what he was gonna say. It's just a fee, it's a special revenue fund. And it's not tax. Or Christie adjusting.
The lesser of evils.
Yeah. You're such a happy guy. Of course, I think you've always been that way.
He's too happy sometimes. I worry about him.
Yeah, that's right. Hard for an attorney to be happy too.
Wonderful plan.
Right?
He's semi-retired, fishes when he wants, he's got it all figured out.
Good.
So much bad stuff in there, it's hard.
No. You have no attorney worked on that? That's right.
Somewhere.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Yeah.
This good. Hi, Commissioner.
Putting up stuff behind us, we sat on the wrong side,
Oh,
we won't be able to participate.
Roughly 7.
those are good ages. Ready to go to school. But they still need their parents.
Yeah.
I got them, they have stupid return for what that comes in.
No, it's just.
And then when they graduate college, it's a woman with her parents, and she's very stupid as we got.
I don't have that much to do with, and then your response plans. Good summer so far.
Is it something?
Yeah, it's a good
start. Is it summer?
Over here. That's where I am. It's like,
Probably not.
okay, it's like this, you know, it's like, it's in the. Kevin Gave a lot of action.
Yeah. That's all right, there's plenty of time.
Yeah.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, that's right.
We have a much longer slide.
Not far.
Yeah, it comes up, it comes out.
Yeah, so it's just been smooching in class.
Yeah,
2 weeks or so.
Someone here.
Yeah.
Well, we have one.
I don't think it's summer until July here.
Yeah, that's it. We, summer starts July.
Yeah.
There were 3 countries, so we were kind of worried about that part of it. The other good thing is they're all.
Well, listen to you, I don't get very often.
I know that, you're like, wow.
Yeah, I didn't realize.
Really good friends.
At least you don't have a target on you.
I'm glad I'm old enough to laugh. But everything else that's going on, that's small change.
Native American
Yeah, they're like 25%, and that's the cutoff. That is the cutoff. So,
They didn't have to pay war.
time to make it deeper into, 1/8, 1/16, and all that, but the bottom line, you're on the bunch for the grandkids got in. So did my kids, they had their school. And the one down in Oregon, he's actually making a profit. Yeah.
Okay, it's 10:03, should we start?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Sarah, for who else?
You want anything to kick this off or not?
Well, just we're happy that everyone is back with us, excited to start working on our focus areas and our action items. The strategic plan has been a long and I think valuable process, but it's also exciting to get to a point where it feels like we can start focusing in and zooming in on the actions we'll begin to take and the change that can have. So I'm just excited to keep going. I don't know if Commissioner Sproul or Olson wanted to add anything.
Not in that way, but I do know that Dan Kais hasn't met you gentlemen yet, so I hope you'll introduce yourselves.
Old friends by now.
Okay.
The whole South Dakota story.
Terrific. Okay, good.
So thank you for that, though, and welcome, Dan. Okay, well, it's kind of our agenda. So what I have is a presentation that's gonna, and if you could bring that up then, Debbie. And here's, oops,
Sorry.
are we doing it together? Is that?
No, he's,
Okay,
all
I
you.
got it. Here we go. So here's the 4 items for today. The context, just to really quickly, I'm going to do that. Then the main point, the 3 main points are priority actions, what we know so far. Mike and I will do that. Paul Manson's on the phone, and he will help with the end. Actually, I said Mike and I, Paul and I. And Paul has preliminary survey results for you. And he'll explain what that means by preliminary. And then hope to get all that done in 30 minutes and then have a full hour and a half to deal with the actions, the last 2 items there. And both how we get a short list of actions and then what we, PSU, intends to do further evaluation of those actions. So let me go with the first item then, and context is pretty straightforward. You've seen a variation on this slide before. I think the best way to talk about it, since we're all familiar with what's going on, is what's the plan document we're looking for, and how does the plan document fit with everything we've been doing? So the red, the outline of the plan document that we've had approved for quite a while is in black on the left-hand side, and the red shows what we've been doing to get there. So essentially, the introduction is only a page or 2. I haven't had that written yet, but it's not that hard to write. Vision, mission, values, we've got a full, we've got those done, and we've got background material on that, so we can get that part done. The situation assessment I'm going to talk about today in just a minute, so I'll skip that for right now. And then the priorities, we've got the focus areas done and approved at the last meeting. And now we're dealing with actions inside those focus areas, and that's today's meeting. And then some more work from us, and then another meeting, and I'll talk to you about that when we get to next steps. So that's where we are on everything. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that part? Okay, so we're on to, let's see, Debbie is, there we go. Item number 2 then. So priority actions, what we know so far. Here's the reason this slide is up here. We have general agreement with you and with, frankly, the rest of the technical world that that public sector and businesses should be making decisions based on evidence. So this is what I'm going to rehearse for you now, summarize, is all the work we've been doing over the last 6 months together to create that evidence. There's more that we have to create. When we get a short list, we're going to be digging into more detail. But this is kind of the background to say, with everything that we've seen, what, we got to part of that was helpful in getting to focus groups. But now it's with what we've got right now, how do we get to a short list of actions? And the main point I want to make here is that whatever we do today, this short list is a short list for us to do further evaluation. It is not a vote in any way that is final. And it's, and I just want to make it clear that at any time, other actions can be suggested. So even when we come to the next meeting and we say, here's our evaluation of these, whatever we end up with, 15 items, you can say, well, that reminds me that we didn't talk about this last time, and I think this is important. We can still bring it up then. So we will be doing that evaluation, but it will not be definitive. It is always this group's decision on what things to take forward. So what have we done so far then? The first thing is I don't know, what should I aim at, Debbie?
Well, the dongle is over here. I'm not sure what's going on, but here.
There we go. Okay, whoops.
There you go.
There we go. So this is the situation assessment for the outline that we gave you, and we called it a draft last October. That draft got approved, but it got approved as a draft because we knew that we were going to do things between November and now that would affect the situation assessment, and that we wanted to bring them into the situation assessment. So what I sent you yesterday or the day before was the situation assessment, mainly updated, but without an update for the employee survey, because we don't have the employee survey done yet. So, but it's pretty, it's not it's more than half baked at this point. So, oh, really? Did,
Print that one, it was attached.
did
to all
did
the
I,
dates.
I wonder if for some reason you know what I did? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
No, I took the list that you had of people that you sent stuff to, the invitations to, and copied that list to send it to everybody.
Oh, okay.
And you weren't on that list because you were the one who sent it. Oh, okay. I am. I apologize. Okay, well, I've got copies of it and I'll make sure you get it. So, so that's, and I'm not gonna spend time on that. We're not gonna go through it. My note was, if you wanna rehearse, wanna go over that a little bit, focus on the following pages right here. Pages 22 to 27 were where we talked about strengths and weaknesses and what effective systems looked like in local governments and how Tillamook compared on those and what the implications were. And that information was all available to you when you were doing, it wasn't of that much use for the vision, mission, values, but it was more useful on the focus areas. And so that is already incorporated at some level into focus areas. So there's that information. There is also, but to go from the draft situation assessment to the final, we need to include some information, which I already have, on leadership team exercises on certain issues that occurred after October. And one of those is described, the most important one is described in more detail in this other memo that I gave you that I'm going to get to on how to think about possible actions. And then any other information that might have occurred, and then especially the results of the employee survey. So that's where we are on that. And just a reminder, the approved draft of vision, mission, values, this was approved in March. And you've seen this before several times. And this, at this point, it has some bearing on the actions that you're going to come up with. But it's more, the bearing that it has mainly is, are these actions consistent with that vision, mission, and values? So, because somebody could say, well, wait a minute, this thing that we're doing here doesn't really have any bearing. I mean, I think that lacks commitment or whatever it is. So those are in the background as you make those decisions. The next is the focus areas. These were agreed to at the previous meeting in April, and we've got these 4 focus areas, and that's what we're working with. So the objective for today is to get actions underneath those focus areas and get enough of them that PSU can do some evaluation for the next meeting. And that's where you'll see language of, what we're going to try to do today is 2 things: make a longer list and then make a shorter list. And I've got an exercise that's going to make that, I hope, easier than you would. So that exercise is what we will come up to next, where, and it's described in the memorandum that I gave you, and I will come back to that when we get there. So now I think we're ready to get there. Yeah. Debbie, is there anything you can do to move me to the next one? There we go. Oh, okay. Here are, just to kind of give you the heads up, there are 2 things in the memo that I gave you. One was work that the leadership team did in advance or after, now I can't remember which, the October meeting, where I asked, what do you think about actions now, having seen the first version of this situation assessment? And I got a lot of feedback on that. I put that all together and I've copied it into the memo. And then we did vision, mission, values. We did focus areas. And at the end of the last meeting, we went through an exercise and said, now that we've got more information, now what do you think? And we got a shorter list. And that's this list right here, and that's that list up there. To repeat, that doesn't mean we've committed to that list or that something that was on the previous list is out. It just means we need a place to start, and that's where I started. So these are, we've got these ideas on governance, these ideas on finance, and I'll come back to these when we get there. These ideas on central services, sorry, quick, and these ideas on people and places. So that's the exercise we will get to shortly. And now I think I'm ready to go to somehow. Debbie, can you push me forward? There we go. So now, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you for preliminary results of the employee survey, and I'll try to click along on the slides.
All right, sounds good. And just to check, can you all hear me well?
No, it needs to be a little bit louder.
Okay, this is one of the challenges I have on, let's see, is that any better?
Yeah, that's good. Is that too loud? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I thought you were soft. Okay, I think you're pretty good. Now you don't have to talk quite as loud.
All right, well, good. And I'm not sure where I am in a room. I see you all from above, which is always a fun experience. Good morning, everybody, and happy to share some of these preliminary results. Terry, you can bring us into the first slide. I'll just talk a little bit about where we're at. As of this morning, so there's a couple different ways to measure response rates. As of this morning, we're at 60%. We've got another push that went out late this week, and so I think we'll see some more folks come in. The reason I say there's different ways to measure response rates, while I've got 60% who've come in, of that, about 5% only did part of the survey. So we've got some responses on some items, but not on others. And so we're closer probably to 55% who've done more complete survey throughout. Not unusual, that happens. Folks will start a survey, answer the ones they feel comfortable with. Sometimes they drop out over time, but we record those once they've had 2 weeks to try to finish that survey. And they were reminded multiple times. So what we're looking at here is the overall, is the county on the right track or wrong track? I take this as a good sign here. So 72% see things mostly or on the right track, but you do have 1 in 5 respondents saying that the county's not on the right track. There is some in the middle ground here, 9% who don't know. And Terry, we can go to the next piece, which is related to this first slide, which is the question about how well the county is serving citizens and community stakeholders. Here we see it shifts a little bit more, and I think what's notable is the don't know gets a little bit bigger, which makes sense. Folks may not be aware countywide, but now we go from the 28% to 28% that disagree that the needs of citizens or the community are being met. We can talk in a bit at the end about sort of how to interpret this. I think it ties into some interesting pieces, though, about some real positive reflections on the strategic planning process that I'll share in a moment. All right, Terry, let's go talk about focus areas now. Oh, so you saw in the draft instrument, we are using what's called an importance performance assessment. And it's the acronym's IPA, and I promise it has nothing to do with Pelican Brewing. But it's a way to measure the perception of how important a focus area is, and then an assessment of how well performance is going on. I want to show first the mean score. So these are the averages, and then I sorted by focus area importance. So finance and central services are in this 80%. So very important category to employees. People and places follow up, and then governance at 68. What's interesting here is across the board performance is really rated as average. So 50 on our scale was average. But there's not full agreement on this. So Terry, let's take a look at the first of these examples. So when you do these importance performance analyses, one thing I really enjoy is you have a chance to see how the data present across all the responses. So you see each of these dots is a survey. It's one of the county employees, and the darker clusters mean there's a number of overlapping responses. The upper green box there, the upper right-hand corner, for all of the next 4 slides means that the employees have rated this as important and performance is above average. So green tends to mean doing well. The lower right corner, that red box, is something that's important and performance is below average. So these are areas for improvement or areas of concern. On the left-hand side of the plot, where importance is below 50%, these are areas where we worry a bit less. Folks have assessed this area maybe not as important, and so performance matters a little bit less. The yellow box is sometimes what we call sort of the overkill box, and the orange box there in the lower left is something that may be a low priority. And so across the top and along the sides here, you see a bar plot. That's the distribution of the responses. The thing I pay attention to when I see these is I see the clusters over to the right. So this is an important area, but some disagreements. So you'll see there's a blue diamond there in the middle. That's that mean score I just shared with you in the previous table. This is an important area of governance, but there's a lot of difference of opinions about how well performance is occurring. And so this tells us that there's sort of folks half and half, really. If you look at those orange distributions on the right-hand side, half and half are saying doing well, not doing well. So this is something to explore a little further on the governance. The next slide will show another focus area.
Trying, Paul.
Don't worry, you're good. Doing better than I could from Portland. This is the finance focus area, where we see a little bit more of a rating of the importance going up and some uncertainty. So one of the things I'll note here, you see that orange bar on the right-hand side in the middle that's really tall. That's right at 50%. That means that this has been rated as an average performance by employees. I also take it with a little bit of a grain of salt because that's also, in survey work, we sometimes find that individuals will find sort of an easy response when they're unsure of how to answer it. We did in this survey give them a chance to click a box saying, I don't know. So theoretically, they've put a value in here because they feel like they know one, but sometimes this is a hint that they're sort of splitting it in half. They're unsure. So we see in the finance area more importance than governance and a little bit more of a sense that things are performing better, though obviously, so it's better than the previous area. Some areas for improvement here as well. And we'll go into the next one, central services. Here, the little blue diamond starts to drop down the performance area overall. So this is where it's really rated as important by employees, and we have some more concerns that the performance is below average for the county, and that blue diamond shifts down. Oh, you can do one last one before that on the people and places. If you can go back one.
Fine.
Don't worry. And this is the last one, and I think there's some, there's a little bit lower response rate. This is an item that was skipped a little bit more out of the focus areas, which I interpret as sort of uncertainty or don't know. And so again, here we see the blue diamond is on that line for performance at average, but it is important. It's in that sort of very important versus extremely important area to the right-hand side. So just to pause for a second, across these 4 focus areas, what we see is generally that these are focus areas that are important to staff. They agree that this is important, and they're divided on how well performance is occurring, though it varies a little bit. In the last couple slides we'll close on, we'll talk about the strategic planning process in particular. I take all of these as heartening. Here we see 72% believe that the importance of the strategic plan is very or extremely important to their own work. And even though 22% is on that left-hand side, mostly that's just slightly important. So there's not a lot of naysayers here that the strategic planning process won't be beneficial for their work or is not important for their work. So to go back to the earlier slide that talked about the right track, wrong track, or meeting the needs of citizens, what this tells me is you have employees who are concerned about where things are, but this planning process resonates and it's important to their work. And then the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what they think might happen in terms of their own workload. And I think we have another good story here, but something to keep an eye on as the strategic plan development rolls out. And this is the assessment of whether they think the strategic plan, after having learned about it through the survey process, will increase their work or change their workload. Big group here, 39%, they don't anticipate a change. So that either means there's a little bit of salesman work here to be done to sort of let them know what's going to be beneficial. But we do have 46% who think that the outcome of this planning process will make their lives better, will make their lives easier in the workplace. So these 2 slides tell me that you've got a motivated workforce that sees the potential benefits out of the planning process, at the same time seeing some needs for improvement and growth across the county. And just last one, this is one that will be sort of ground truth with the Gallup survey when those data come in. Job satisfaction, satisfied or very satisfied is 2/3 of employees. 21% are in the middle there, and 13% are sharing some level of dissatisfaction. This is about in line with sort of what I would expect, knowing that sort of right track, wrong track. there's probably some overlap between these two that we'll explore in the final report. And so those are the survey responses overall. Just to let you know, we are continuing to collect them. Response rates have been great across the departments. I'm seeing them lag where I expect them usually to, which are in departments that are very citizen or customer facing. So folks that are out in the field or in facilities that they're not working on a computer or a desk. Those are the types of offices that tend to lag in these surveys, and that's expected. Though those numbers are coming up, and I appreciate that there's been internal encouragement to push those response rates up. We did have another push this week, so we'll let that sit and see where numbers come up next week. Response rate wise, just to give you a sense, so at that 55 to 60, depending on how we measure it, that's a good number. You tend to want to go a little higher for smaller organizations, and by small here I say under 500 employees. So it would be nice to see us go closer to that 65, 70. So we'll see if that happens here in this next push. The nice thing is with the sample size that we have, that's 10 or 15 more employees, and I think that's doable with a little encouragement.
Okay, Paul, thanks very much. I'm gonna just make a couple points and then turn it over to you folks for discussion. I'm gonna emphasize what Paul said is what Mike and I saw in the data too, and I'm gonna make it really simple. Every one of those scatter plots shows heavy green over on the right-hand side. And so everybody thinks things are pretty important, but every one of those scatter plots shows a wide distribution of how well they're doing. Some people, and you got to be careful in that interpretation. It doesn't mean that everybody thinks that the county is doing average. What it means is that some people think the county is doing, in their department is doing average. Some people think the county is doing 100% a great job, and some people think the county is doing a 0% job. So that wide diversity there is important, and we can't, the survey itself, as Paul would reinforce, doesn't tell us the reasons for that. All we know is that that's what people are saying. That's the first point. And the second point of Paul's that I want to emphasize is that the fact that people are willing to say that performance is poor. Some people are saying it's great, but some people are saying it's poor, and some people are saying it's average, means that people are paying attention to, they're thinking about it at least. And the fact that they're then saying, but they think that the plan can improve what's going on is a good sign. And it gives some optimism about the ability of the plan to do something, provided, we do it the right way. So with that, I wanted to see if you have any questions about what we've presented so far. What we just covered are the data we put together on what are the key issues to be addressed and what should, how are we going to address those issues? That's where the actions come in. So with that, Paul has another meeting he's got to get to. He can stay around now, but now's the time to, if you have any questions about the survey. And one other point to reemphasize is this is the preliminary result. We don't have everybody in yet. And because of that, Paul hasn't done some of the work that I think he'll be able to do that will be useful. We can what are called cross-tabulate the employee characteristics with responses. So we can start to see, for example, do employees that have been here a long time tend to say this, where employees that haven't been here tend to say that, or those kinds of questions. And we got a few of those things that we can do. So with that, discussion for you, questions for us.
What's the total number now of submittals versus the number of employees? Are we at like 65%, or that number?
Yeah, Paul, you want to?
We're at 60% even as of this morning.
What would be a good number in your experience?
I think for the size of the workforce, 70% would be great. And so that's another 10%. So about, 15, 20 responses would push us up there with a little bit of a nudge, maybe.
And, Mike, you might want to, that is a response from somebody who knows how to do surveys and knows statistics. Mike you don't know any of that, but you do know what it is to manage organizations like this. So do you have any comments on
Well,
that rate?
First comment is, excuse me for coughing, my grandchild spends a lot of time incubating me with these new diseases. It is not COVID. I tested this morning, so I apologize for the cough. But I seem to parallel his sicknesses that he gets from day school. Yeah, I think relatively speaking, that is compared to other, just generally, people are satisfied with 70%. Myself, I'm not. In an organization that has responsibilities for public service, and in an organization that's trying very hard to pay attention to a change agenda which may be coming, I would expect, or I would be more assertive. I think you ought to be pushing 80%. And if it's not, I think you need to find out why, because that says something itself. They're either not connected, they're too discouraged, or they think this is BS. All three of those things are
Or they've
important.
got too much other work, and the direction is that other work
Is more important.
Yeah.
And that is a common malady that you're trying to deal with. So, I wouldn't make a big deal out of this, but if I'm sitting there as a manager and I'm doing this, I would be a little more assertive about, hey, why haven't we got this in yet?
So other discussion, yeah, sure.
Well, to that point, is there a way without maybe talking to Hank, could we see what our survey rates are for each department? And then those of us that know we need to maybe make a more intentional effort to remind them to and encourage them to take it, we can do that.
Yeah,
So
we can
did
do that.
Sarah, we sent it out to departments that were lower.
Okay,
So if you didn't receive that, it means that your department is at a higher response rate.
okay.
And Paul, you had an observation on that with some crosstabs you did to department
Can you
and
stop sharing and see Paul for this conversation?
Yeah.
Just helpful.
Well, there he is.
Thank you.
you had a comment about that based on your experience elsewhere.
Well, I'm just looking at the by location breakdown. And so, where, like Mike was saying, 80% is a nice number. So you're seeing 80% from courthouse staff, from the library staff. So those places, that's hitting that target. Where we're seeing lagging is, public works, parks, and justice facility. And that was sort of my comment I was sharing, for employees that are in the field a lot, or sort of client customer centered facing. The health clinic's another one where you could get a little bit more. I'm not surprised. I know it's the type of work that has to sort of be balanced to sit down in front of a device, or I don't know if folks are allowed to pull this up on a mobile personal phone or any of these sorts of access points. And so I know when we started this process, we talked about helping them make time to do that survey work. And so just maybe an encouragement to achieve that. But I am mindful that it's paving season and folks are headed to the parks now, and those demands are on the rise.
And I agree with this point. And I would assert that those are the people that are touching most of your customers. They're the face-to-face people. They are the ones that are critical. So just saying, oh, well, they're busy and they're not going to be interested, I don't think it's satisfactory.
But, we are where we are, and we can, we're following up now, and we can, follow up later also. So, yes, Commissioner.
I have a question for Paul. Paul, it's Mary Faith, Tillamook County Commissioner. How are you?
Oh, wow, good to see you.
Good. I'm wondering about both you and Terry have mentioned now that the disparity between, everybody thinks it's important. Some people think that performance is very high. Some people think it's very low. Are those results broken out by department? If we were to try to tease out, what does that mean? What does the 90 percentile and 10th percentile, what does that mean? Is there a possibility to tease that out more?
We can. And so I'll make a note that for the final reporting, we have a sense of if there's something driving that either from the type of work or type of department. Because I think to build on Mike's point here, if you have sort of more of a frontline perspective that's seeing things one way versus an administrative perspective that's seeing a different way, that's a good difference to understand.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think it would be helpful to know that.
Yeah, and the tricky part about that is that, I mean, all these points are coming together. Where Mike says he'd feel more comfortable with 80%, Paul would too. If he's at 65%, and that 65% is happening because certain departments are only coming in at 50% or 40%, and then he's trying to generalize about those departments based on a 40% response rate, just gets a little trickier. So we will do what we can on that, but we will, I know for sure Paul will not go beyond the data.
Thank you.
Mike will.
Because Mike just gets.
Mike's got other data. He's got the
Are
computer.
we out of line with comparable organizations? At this point in the survey and the spread and so on, you've got like what you could calculate as a mean and then one standard deviation and all that. Are we in the ballpark or are we unusual?
I would say that, and I'll let Paul comment in a minute, but my opinion is that you are definitely in the ballpark on response rate. I would say that you are below, I don't know about below average. I think probably below average. By that, I mean below 50%, but you're not, certainly not in the top 10% of people, of organizations that feel like we got this covered. You wouldn't even want 100% of the people saying, giving a rating of 100% to every service, because it kind of feels like they're not thinking about what could be done better. But a good, Mike and I talked about this on the way over. What would you like? And we kind of settled it 80%. If you could get people saying 80% level of performance, that's good performance, but there's 20%, but they're recognizing there's 20% they could do better. 50% is, on the low side. It's not a surprise to, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody here, but it does confirm that. At least that's my sense of it. Paul, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, that's right. And I think, so there's a couple ways to understand the question, right? It's sort of, I think the response rate, I do think we're in the ballpark. There's actually a funny dynamic here where you also don't want to go past 90%. You start to worry that if you have high response rate, that maybe people have been overly encouraged and then they're not being as candid. And so we'll head for that sweet spot. And then in terms of some of these response pieces, I think the right track, wrong track question is always a nice gut check in a way, because we know that we can compare that to citizen responses. I don't want to sort of pick on Portland, but right now, if you survey the city here, I think the most recent survey, 84% said we're on the wrong track. So, employees here are saying the opposite. 80 are saying you're on the right track. That reflects obviously a public service motivation that I am sure employees there have. That's why they want to come to work every day. And then to the point of that 50% question, yes, the importance and performance items. There's two things probably going on there. One is sort of familiarity with that. So do folks know about finance? Do they know about central services? And I think we can get a clue at that. One thing I didn't share here is we have two open-ended questions at the end where in their own words, employees are sharing what they think top priorities are. And I've been coding those, assigning a label to the responses. And the most common one is really around what are the public priorities for the county. So employees are sharing, we should be working on this for the community, or working on this, whether it's healthcare, housing, concerns about houselessness, access to healthcare. So employees are thinking about it through their own lenses as they sort of look at those importance numbers.
Marlene, I saw a message come up real quickly. If there's something you wanted to say, or is that just a message to Paul? I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, it's just a message to Paul about the Health and Human Services Department response rate. It might help if I share we have some competitive people, but also they may want to go, wait, we're at 25%. We're not going to be represented overall if we have quite a few people, but only a few responding. So that's all. Thanks.
Yes. Marlene, on the clinic side, it's 62%, and on the administration side, it's 50%.
Okay, that's not too bad, but we can push it.
Okay.
If I could add just a you've heard me say this before, it's often overlooked. They say, well, how do we get to the public? You know, if a lot of, you get to them primarily through your employees. If the employees know what's going on and they have some feeling that they can influence what's going on, they will communicate to their friends and associates. And they're influencing just by virtue of the fact that they're in this organization. People will seek them out for questions. So they're very likely influencing 50 to 60 people. And if they are stating they don't know, or you're on the wrong track, then that information is going out as well. And it's that kind of information is a very profound public contact that that organizations simply overlook. They think they're talking to the customers directly. Most of the time, you're talking to the customers through your employees.
One other point, Paul, as you're looking at this in the future, Jody, the HR director, is she's not here right now. I don't know if she's on the call, but I looked and I saw almost 20%. She said 1 out of 5 saying county's on the wrong track. But when you get to job satisfaction, only 13% or 12% or something were saying that they were unsatisfied with their job. I'd be interested to see what happens with the Gallup poll, because one possible interpretation of that is, well, yeah, not doing, on the wrong track, but I got a good job and I want to hold on to it. So, I don't know to what extent that's true. And we never really will know. We're not, the only way to know is to do more detail and ask those questions, but that's that point there. So there is more work to be, what we have agreed to previously is extending the survey and then, kind of targeting those to putting a call out to those departments to see what they can do. And then we will have to close the survey, and we will get a little bit tight on, the July 15th meeting that we have coming up. If we don't close and get the open-ended responses back, because that will influence what, we won't have that information here today to talk about what things should be on the short list for evaluation. So we'll have to bring that to the next meeting, and we will either have evaluated some of those things or we won't have, and we'll work our way through that. So any other questions on this agenda item? Okay, Paul, any final comment? I know you got to get out of here. Do you have anything to say?
No, just thanks for the great questions, and looking forward to sort of the next set of analyses. And make sure to share for those that have completed the survey. Thank you. There's been lots of thoughtful comments on the open-ended side, so kudos to staff who have taken the time to do that work, and we appreciate that.
Okay, and presumably, Paul, if we close this, whenever it is, sometime next week, you would be able to deliver a written report in advance of the meeting on July 15th or not?
Yeah, can do. And let me know sort of the lead time. I know you're probably the week before, right? It's right after the holiday, but let me know when you want that in your hands to have time to review prior to getting together on the 15th. Okay.
All right. That sound okay to everybody on where we are then? Okay, Paul, thanks very much for showing up.
Okay, good to see you all.
Okay, so Debbie, if you can take me back to the share screen. Oops. I got jumped ahead one. Jump back two. Are you and I dueling here?
You were competing.
Get your hands off there.
Okay, Debbie, I'm gonna let you do it.
Okay. Where are we going? Which way?
Thanks. Okay,
We should
So,
always let Debbie do.
so here we are on the actions to consider, and here's what I have in mind. I guess at this point, I'm asking you to trust me that I have been through this kind of thing before, and I know that we can move relatively quickly towards something that will give us the direction that we need. So here's what I have in mind. We refer to the preliminary list, which was created primarily by the leadership team as expressed in earlier work sessions. that's the memo that's called possible action suggested by the leadership team. And in that one, as I said, that I describe what I'm trying to do, and then I give you two lists. One is a really long list of stuff that got said at the in a survey of the leadership team in October. And then the next, after a couple pages of that, on page 6 starts a shorter list from the leadership team at the work session in April. That list got longer than what I show on the wall here because a couple people were, 2 or 3 people were online and not able to participate because, I don't know, they couldn't get their voices heard or something like that. So they sent stuff in afterwards. So rather than trying to edit their stuff, I just put it there as an addition. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's not on those lists. It could be added to those lists. Sometimes it duplicates what's on those lists, so we'll have to figure that part out. But what I'm putting up here, just as a starting point, is the things that came out of the group that was in the room last in April. And that's that list right there. So the basic exercise is to brainstorm to add to the list to create what will be today's longer list if necessary. And then do an exercise to reduce the long list to a short list. And then finally agree on the process that we're going to use to do an evaluation of the shorter list to bring that to you at the next meeting. So here's what I would like to get to the brainstorming. I'd like you to think about it this way. Look at the list that's on the wall, which is the same list as the slides that I gave you before. So I can jump back to that. Debbie, if you can jump back to the one that says about 10 slides back before the graphic one's the one that says governance. And just take a look at those. And what I want you to look at is to say, is there anything that is not on that list? Could be anywhere else on some other list. It could be something that's just in your head that didn't make it there the right way, that you think has the chance of being in one of 2 categories. Category 1 is really urgent. We need to start on that in year 1. Category 2 is still important, but if we don't get to it till years 2 or 5, that's okay, but it's still something that should be mentioned in the plan. So is there anything not up there? And as you look at those lists, you'll start to see what we didn't have time to look at when we were at the meeting, which is some of the things overlap, like revenue generation, services and stability is both under governance and finance. And some of the things under people and places are actually under governance also. That's just the way it is. But what I want to do is see if there's anything to add to that list. And once I add to that list, then we're going to do something else. So I'm going to go up there and see if anybody has something, again, with this idea in mind, that not that you're sure that it should be on there, but you think that it should be on there to at least be considered as an item, a level 1 or level 2 priority. So just, call it out and I'll write them up.
I'm not seeing it yet on the slide that you're talking about that has those priorities. I see the scatter plot for the governance focus area, but no list.
Yeah, I think.
Slide with the list.
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit farther, go up more, Debbie. Yeah, keep going. You're getting close. Okay, that's also in the memo. Let's just do it by this. Is there anything on governance, any other thing that people think isn't well enough captured here, that it's completely different, or that something should be consolidated or whatever?
When you talk about an audit, are you talking about a financial audit or a performance audit or both?
The department audits, I think, were performance audits. I mean, that's my recollection of what I heard.
An operational.
Yeah, an audit, we call it, maybe an operational assessment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we be looking at the items that came online? It looks, I haven't seen these yet, but it looks like there's a lot of them that could go.
When you say came online, oh, you mean
You dumped in
from,
here.
from
Yeah.
October?
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. There's
April for
there was a lot of detail in there that we didn't have. So if anybody wants to look at those and bring them up here, we can do that now.
You've got revenue generating services. How about the flip side? Reduction in services as appropriate or something like that. In other words, there's two sides to every ledger.
Yeah.
Fourth one
Yeah,
down. The flip side of revenue generating is cost reduction.
evaluation, if I call that evaluation of service effectiveness,
No, I call it cost reduction.
okay.
Or something that has to do with spending less money.
Cost, okay, just cost reduction independent of the value of the service. The service may be valuable, but you still,
Yeah,
it's not that it's not effective, it's just that you don't have the money to do it.
yes. Yeah, you got it.
Evaluation of cost reduction opportunities.
Okay, that's an awfully bureaucratic way of saying it, but that's okay.
What would you like me to say? I can,
Put that down. That's okay. I don't want to nitpick it, but you know, we're focused so much on bringing in more money. There's a flip side to that equation.
yes.
Maybe a cost savings initiative.
There you go. See, the military just chimed in.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Okay. Okay, evaluation of cost savings initiatives. Anything else? Bill, did you have your hand up? No.
No, I was just looking at,
Online, Marlene, some of those comments in October were from you. Is there anything that you had on there that you wanted to add to this governance list?
If you've got my comments and notes and have added them, I'm trying to find your memo and the date, so I'm just trying to find documents to reference.
Oh, did you get the email from me a couple days ago? It's in you would find it in the file called potential actions.
Preliminary ideas for actions.
Yeah, there was, I don't know the exact name of the file, but in the email, I referenced the file. It's a file that starts with the number 4. Because it was the 4th item.
Thanks. I will look real quick. I'm sure that you sent it. I just have not had a chance to look at it.
I don't see policies and procedures just across the board. It could apply to a lot of,
Say policies and procedures, just generally.
generally for, there's so many things. It could go in
Okay.
any category.
Okay,
There's a couple of very specific policies captured, but
okay.
there's a lot that needs to be done.
Okay, I'm gonna put a general eval of policies and procedures. And this is under the heading of governance, Rachel. So is this mainly kind of county-wide policies and procedures? This would not be, the department audits operational assessment would be more of their procedures, right? Or are you, so is this, I mean, at least what I'm thinking is this is county-wide and this is a more detailed departmental evaluation.
So the audits and assessment is going in and looking at departments and just evaluating operations and identifying ways to make things better if they exist. Out of that, I could see policies and procedures being developed.
Oh, I see, sure.
My original comment was we are sorely lacking in a lot of policies and procedures that don't exist across the county. And ones that need to be updated. So there's an evaluation piece of existing ones as well as creation of ones
Got
that do not exist.
Okay, so that could be that could be a governance item, just, there's this, develop a work plan and do the work to do that evaluation.
I was just making the point that it applies to governance, it applies to finance departments, it applies to central services departments.
Agreed.
So I was just trying to make a general statement that there's a lot under that bullet.
Got it. Okay, good point. Okay, anything else here? Okay, well, just to keep it, remember, it's not final, but just to keep it moving, let's move on. Could you just go down one slide, Debbie? So let's take a look at the second focus area, finance. These are my notes on the wall that they come from that. So there's the full description is there. I think, in my opinion, did a pretty good, because finance is one central service. We got a lot of detail for finance that we don't have for other places. This feels pretty good to me, but there may be stuff missing. Is there anything you want to add into finance?
Is stability the same as predictability? You can be stable, but not know what's going to happen. I guess maybe they are the same. I'm just asking that predictable is more important than stability almost. If you know it's going to go up or down, you can do something about it.
Yeah.
You can be stable and erratic at the same time. Maybe.
Yeah.
It's called bipolar.
I don't know.
I'm glad you're here.
We haven't just moved into therapy, have we?
He's got to interpret Doug for us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
I think they're, for me, they're pretty similar. I don't know that, I can put up here predictability also, because we do want that shows up. That does show up over here when we get to, well, I guess it's new financial software. The subset of that was 6-year forecasting or something like that.
That was what I was gonna ask, is in that revised budget process, is that our long-term financial review, or is that a separate piece?
I think this is a short. Yeah, there it is. It's a 6-year financial forecast. I just put the shorthand up there.
Okay.
So that's where the predictability comes in. So it's cutting across these two things, Commissioner.
I would further clarify, long-term budget planning, we actually have a long-term plan. So I mean, we can talk about things we want to do in the future, but actually having a financial plan. And the new budget process is just how we get through the budget process every year as well.
Okay, so
I think we want a long-term financial plan,
Period.
separate from the budget process. Just add another
They're two
bullet.
different things.
Yeah, long-term financial plan.
No.
Financial plan. In addition to, so that's part one of that. Part two of that is just improved process,
Mhm.
whatever that means at this point. And every jurisdiction has things that they're always trying to do.
You have a long-term plan and then you have a process to get there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it's also, it circles back. It also includes an improved process for developing a long-term financial plan. I mean, you want a long-term financial plan, but you may need a process that you don't have to be able to develop that plan, or resources or whatever. So, it may be that, that the finance department would say, well, we can't develop a long-term financial plan unless we've got new financial software, because we can't assemble the information to do that kind of planning without better data storage and retrieval techniques. So, okay, other stuff on finance? Okay.
What's a financial investment advisor?
I think that was Rachel's, but it was, well, go ahead.
I want to hear what you
Well,
what you
what I would say is that you've got, the county has has assets that it holds that are not being used. And some of those are presumably in pension plans, but some of them are also just in funds that are being held for future expenditures. What are those funds doing in the meantime while they're being held? Or, are they sitting in a vault somewhere here? Are they, being invested? Are they in safe investments? Are they, is the liquidity there? That's what I'm thinking you meant by that.
Are there other creative ways that we can be investing our money to generate revenue? Similarly with our fees. I mean, I go to all these conferences and there's all kinds of cool stuff happening that counties are doing to have better financial situations. But we don't have an expert guiding us in that.
Yeah.
So I think we have a missed opportunity.
What would you do, Rachel? That fee issue, sometimes the financial advisor that you're talking about here, which might be, an attorney or an attorney slash big investment firm, are not the people that know anything about local fees, how to develop local fees per se. Do you want a separate item for fees?
I think the fees is already covered in our first bullet.
Okay. Okay.
They're included in the process that we've already started.
Okay.
I feel like it's, as with all departments, everybody's running as fast as they can, and rarely do we have the opportunity to step back and say, what is our long-term financial investment? And again, it's that long-term planning. It's looking more intentionally at all of that. And we don't do that. And is there someone we should engage to help us do that?
Got it.
How we manage our money and all of those pieces.
Okay.
There's a lot of management by crisis going on in this organization. And that's not necessarily something you can control. But this guy here, he goes to work when the water comes over Highway 101. I mean, he does a few other things too, but you can't predict all those kinds of things. And so all of a sudden the priorities, what you thought you were going to do at 11 o'clock one morning could be entirely different than what you actually do. So how do you get your arms around that? Well, part of it as a local government, I'm not sure you can, because you're reactive, not proactive, sort of by definition.
We were having a conversation at a budget hearing about different revenue generating opportunities, and the sheriff pulled up something from Deschutes County, and that when people visit Deschutes County, they pay all of these different fees, and some of them are voluntary. And like there was a voluntary forest contribution. There was all kinds of creative stuff that people are paying when they visit. And none of us in the room knew, like, what can we do? What can't we do? What's allowed? But none of us had any idea how to get there. So that's what I hope we're going to find, is somebody to tell us, this is what other counties are doing and this is how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that stuff, that's definitely possible. There are people that do that work. A lot of these things are well known on what user, and certainly the trend over the last 20 years has been from tax to user fee. And so a lot of people are getting pretty creative about user fees.
Well, for sure, because we can't raise the taxes.
Yeah.
And you gotta have elector buy off.
Right, but we just plain can't raise property taxes. So it has to be something.
Okay, so if we can keep this moving, then let's move on.
What is special revenue? Is that, is that meaning for a special revenue fund or something that's overarching that is special revenue separate from what we do now? I don't.
Can anybody help me with that? That's the note that we got. Is there, anybody remember exactly whoever brought that one up, what you were looking for? I mean, clearly, I think your point ties together. Is there something else that can be done?
What we consider special revenue now is primarily dedicated or restricted as compared with discretionary. And so like the health department gets all kinds of revenue. It's typically in a special revenue fund because you can't take it and, build a park bench. You got to apply it to something that they're doing.
Right. I mean, the term that I'm used to using is enterprise funds. So that you've got, you've got a health department that's got its own set of funds and it can only be used in that
I just
department.
didn't know what it meant in this context.
Does anybody, I
In,
mean,
in your memo, it has general fund and special revenue fund, so I think there was a note for distinction between those two types of funds.
And I think it may have been how we plan for each of them. I mean, just the fact that it, there are differences, but they both need to be in our financial planning and process piece of this. That we tend to not necessarily look at the special revenue funds with the long-term planning and those pieces. I feel like that was part of it's just that, how we treat each of them. I'm just kind of looking at that piece.
okay. So I mean, to some extent, this could tie, you could imagine as you're trying to develop a long-term financial plan, getting those issues cleared up as part of that financial planning.
Yeah.
Okay, can we go to central services? So here, we've got, I summarized this as adequate tools and support for central services. So I think this group has been pretty open about the fact that the parts of central services that do not perform as well as the departments would like them to. It's understandable given what they're working with, et cetera. And so on the one hand, I'd like to give central services more resources. Example, IT. You could do better IT if you had more money, right? You get you more resources. But at the same time you're doing that, then what you'd like in return is an improvement in responsiveness. And so these are, if you put them in order, is what do we need as departments, to have the departments operate well? If this is what the department needs, what do we need from central services that we should be able to expect to have the departments operate well? Do they have adequate tools and support to do that? And what can we do to, if it's not completely adequate, what can we do to improve the responsiveness, including improved communication? So these things all tie together pretty logically, I think, and might be hard to separate some of those out. What's not here, could be here, what facilities is there as a call out, but there's nothing on this list that is more specific. And I think some of that showed up in some of the stuff that was in the memo I sent you, that where some people were more specific about, what should be done in HR, for example, or what should be done in facilities. And that becomes a question. Is there, the way I would pose it to you folks is there, if you had one, like, let's say that that there's whoever it is, a state building inspector that comes here and tells you this building's going to fall down and we're going to condemn it in another year. And, and you're going, wow, we really got to get doing something about facilities because we're not going to have any place to go. That facilities thing might make it to the level of the strategic plan. If on the other hand, it's just, we've got departments that are doing their work and, they need more resources. That sort of shows up over here. So it's a question of whether there are any central services that you think need immediate attention. And I want to come back to something that I've said many times. In the strategic plan, what I believe you want to be thinking about is what items are really important, and but for the attention of the commission and the leadership team, are unlikely to get done in an expeditious way. Whereas, because some of the things could be very important, let's take public works, for example, very important to get, take care of some flooding issue or something like that. But you've got procedures for doing that. Chris has it under control at the level that his budget allows him to have it under control. And it's not really a strategic plan issue at that point.
And I think central services are perhaps, along with finance, the issue. Because I think that all of our departments are running as fast as they can, working as hard as they can, and they're all relying on central services to be able to do what they do. And that central services is a little bit different because it's an assessment of inputs and outputs, right? And those outputs are what allow every other department to do what they do. Can they get a new employee onboarded? Can they get an employee a computer and a phone? Does that employee have a desk and a chair? Everything that we do is made possible by central services being strong. And I think that it is crucial. And I don't feel like we've looked at central services as a service to ourselves before. I think we've looked at it alongside every other department as if it was just a department doing its thing and not making that connection between the fact that central services ability to do their thing drives everybody else's ability to do their thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it does feel to me like it is separate, because we have department audits over on governance side, and the department audits are necessary for central services, but it's not just their department's audit, it's how they connect to every other department. Because if we don't have adequate any of the central service items, everybody else gets stopped.
You reminded, that's a good point. It reminds me of something that I know I've also said before, but that is that some of these in an initial strategic plan in an organization that hasn't done strategic planning and that is budgetarily constrained and has various service problems, it's hard in the first year to just say we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and be focused on oh gee, that's just another plan, and say I don't want to just do another planning study. But what you're doing by not doing another planning study, you're saying we don't know what the problem is, but we're just going to go ahead and start investing money anyway. So it usually is, you're usually heavily weighted in year one on let's get our arms around this thing. So with that as a statement, what I would say from what you said, Commissioner, a lot of these things kind of get consolidated in some kind of just get that and I push a button somewhere.
And go away.
Is something that is, you hire somebody to come in, work with, or create a committee, and you do a more thorough central services evaluation. We've heard this, we've heard that, the other. The strategic plan information gives you a starting point, but there's a more thorough staff consultant report, staff report, whatever it is, and that might address most of these things, really as a subset of the whole. Because if I were doing this, I would have trouble doing this study without, and saying, well, I'm doing this, but somebody else is doing this, and they decided not to do this one. It's pretty hard to separate those out.
Part of the problem with central services, and I've seen it elsewhere, is it's almost by definition reactive instead of proactive. Somebody wants a new person or so it's got to be filled immediately, drop what you're doing and get the announcement out. Or you've got a printing job or something that would come out, or sometimes, it's a facilities issue, the door doesn't work, the toilets don't work. I mean, you're reacting so much more than you are looking ahead. So I think it's easy to be out of balance in looking ahead and funding yourself as compared with just reacting to what the next incident is.
Yeah, that's a good
part of that. It happens because that's what it is. If something goes wrong, if there's a flood in a restroom, they stop whatever it is they're doing and go fix it. And that's kind of the definition.
Can you just give it to me?
Set it outside the room.
Technology beyond me.
That's a good point. And part of it tying back to, I'll give you next, tying back to Rachel's point where she said, some of this, policy and operation stuff cuts across. If you don't have clear, if everybody's struggling and there are no clear policies, then what you should expect is every central service is kind of, doing what it can to keep some low level of maintenance. And it's waiting for the problem that it has to respond to. And all procedure, the procedure is, at that point, I do whatever I have to do. There isn't a procedure that sets that up to be, okay, we understand that, that's in that queue, here's how it gets taken care of. Mike, you want to say something?
I'm gonna make a comment. From my experience and looking at your organization, you do not have central services. And I would say that that is a major impediment to implementing your strategic plan. Central services, properly organized, is in fact the most important element in productivity increase. Because as you've said, it is the service to the machinery. It's the grease that makes the damn thing keep from getting stuck. Personnel can't get me my job, I can't get the job done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And over the years, what's pretty common that we kind of assume most of central services will be done by people in the department. And what you get out of that is people doing the job who, one, don't understand the whole organization, and two, usually don't like the job and often work at cross purposes. So if you're going to talk about central services as a strategic intervention, I think you need to talk about creating, do we need to create a central service system? And what does it look like? And what is this long range plan in terms of commitment?
Mike, just to clarify your statement, you're not saying that you have to create a department called central services. You're saying that you have to create some kind of organizational structure that is clear about these things being central service. You would have it called central.
If you cannot organize your central services and give them a clear mission that their job is to make everybody else's job effective, then you don't have central services. You got a bunch of independent departments doing the best they can with the tools they got. But central services is a focus on the productivity of the operating departments. And it needs to be an integrated response. Yes, everybody said. And you can't integrate the response by having 4 different department heads try to talk to 6 other department heads.
I see what you're saying.
Most organizations I've been in, including a larger county government and some private stuff, had a department that was a department, and it was either called central services or support services.
Yeah.
Same thing. And they had a director that was at a director level who oversaw all this kind of stuff, whether it was facilities or computers or print shops, all those kinds of things. And they served, and they had the recognition of being a major part of the chain of getting stuff done. I remember when I ran the one at a large school district, and if you didn't have stuff delivered wherever it was supposed to be, including food, you don't get the job done. You can't even feed the kids. All those kinds of things that go on. But it was a top-down organization, part of a much bigger organization. But it was a central department that was funded adequately, and you got the job done. And I've seen that in almost every organization I've ever either seen or worked for. And here it's more of a shotgun, not a rifle, something like that.
Okay.
And Jody had joined us online. I see, and she does have her hand up. So just FYI, we have new person, and Marlene's put a bunch of comments in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Jody, are you there?
I am. Whoops. Let's see. Here we go. To Mike's and Doug's point, I think our current process is each individual department is running as an independent enterprise. And so under the central services umbrella, there is some sort of mechanism to prioritize across the organization versus internal departments trying to balance which fire we put out first. So there is some sort of governance across all departments. And I think that's what I heard out of Mike's statement and out of Doug's statement. And I tend to agree that that lack of governance across the organization versus trying to support independently all of the independent enterprises is the struggle that might have been called out through this process.
Thank you, Jody. Marlene, did you want to, you're writing a lot of stuff. Did you want to say anything or not?
I can send them to you. I didn't know where I think there was a comment about outsourcing, and I just put consider or evaluate the cost effectiveness of contracting or outsourcing more of the central services rather than assuming that we have to have employees for all of these things. It may be more effective to do parts or whole sections a different way. I put under central services, adequate tools. I gave one specific example when you said, how can the department or will a department not be able to function if we don't address this issue? And one of those is enforcement mechanisms and processes for food, pool, and lodging violations. Commissioner Scar is aware of it. I don't know if this is relevant to put here or not. I added productivity, I guess would be the category, starting with an assessment of the duties, assignments, and identified outcomes, metrics, or deliverables. And then the follow-up would be your quality improvement and assurance of those through evaluation, satisfaction surveys, or customer service surveys for central services, just like we would do within the individual departments. Those are my comments.
Thank you. And Marlene, I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth, but to me, it sounds, what I keep hearing is, if I had to summarize all this, I would say that there's a pretty high level of agreement that if there were one item that made the top list, it would be to be determined exactly how, but a pretty thorough across department assessment of central service practices and, you know, what's happening, what's not happening, what could be improved, you know, essentially all these things, and having, you know, having a combination of outside help and staff support, and kind of the same way we're doing the strategic plan, you know, but do that for central services. I think it's been identified, and until I just anyway, Marlene, does that make sense? I mean, a lot of what you're saying would be elements of what would be in such an evaluation and plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be a fair way to say it. I mean, it's not to say people aren't in those roles doing the very best they can with the resources that they have, but we've said, oh, if we had more staff, well, what would more staff do? And to what end? And how would we monitor it? So I think that's what you're saying. I'm looking for the input from those people, not just everyone else telling them what they should do, but what do they think should be done as well.
No, that would be the way that study would get done is somebody would come in, either, you know, you create a committee here or whatever, and the central service people would get together, and there would be interviews and surveys and agreements, et cetera. And in a really good process, it might be that the central service department heads or a staff that they allocate are actually putting together the coordinated system with the help of you know, a team here or an outside team.
And I would think an outside team would be great to have someone who can really help us with best practices around this. I think one of the things that we struggle with as a county, obviously with resources, but if we aren't looking outside of what we have always done, we don't know how to do it better. And so I think central services is a great example of having somebody look at it and help us with best practices. How do we do it better as an integrated network? So I think that's important when we talk about this. Yes, obviously internal, our experts in the house are crucial to us. And looking at outside models would be crucial to us. So not just ourselves coming back together to try to do more with less. Maybe that's what I'm saying. I want to make sure we avoid is inviting all of our department heads to come back and figure out how to do more with less. But rather really look at what does this take? So it's back to that assess needs, tools and support, inputs, outputs of some true central services department.
Okay. I'm gonna take my opportunity as facilitator just to move along, because this is a really good discussion, but I'm not moving it as fast as I thought I could. I thought I was gonna do this really well, but I'm struggling. So focus area number 4, people and places. Let me just admit that I think I put people and places there trying to find words that would be more user friendly. But in the end, I think it confused things. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought what we're really talking about is service delivery to customers. In other words, here's central services. We're talking about, that's clear what we're talking about right here. Here we're doing finance. Here we're doing overall governance. This is the category where the departments that are offering external services, I'm standing behind Chris, Public Works, they're doing stuff. And the question is, in Public Works, in police, in justice, in health, is there anything out there that is such homelessness would be a good example. It's not a department, but are there any things in terms of the services you're offering that are so important that they should make it into the strategic plan, either in year 1 or in year 2 to 5? So I changed that. I don't know if we're going to change the topic or not, but service delivery to customers, where by customers, I mean citizens, property owners, residents, businesses, visitors, those people that are using your services. Is there anything, or is it the case that the departments are handling that, and what the departments need are better direction on policy and procedures, better financials, improvements in the financial system, and improved central services. And they may have to do their own improvements, but the department heads, those are administrative decisions that the department heads can make. Is there anything that the leadership team has to be involved with and wants to deal with in a strategic plan?
I think on this one, it's the last bullet. I think the staff we have with the resources we have, I think we know what the issues are. We know what the community wants, and we are all trying to meet their needs. And some of those are not mandated services. And so we're in a time, and we're getting into it with revenue generation. And what was the term for not cutting, but doing cost savings methods. We just cannot currently do everything that the community wants us to do under people and places. We know what they want, we know more of what they want, and we can't do all of it. And so when resources are as short as they are, how do we prioritize that as a county to help departments help guide departments in what that should be? Or we're making more revenue and we can do more things, but there's a lot under that category, and currently I don't think we can do it all, but we're doing a great job with what we have.
Ditto.
So I think the 4th bullet is that category.
Okay.
Is what leadership or the board needs to focus on.
Okay. Other comments on this one?
Probably could scratch the incorporated cities. I've tried that 3 times in my 30 years here and basically got the crap beat out of me 3 different times. And I mean, we had 100 people in the room talking about these things, and it's a very valid option, but there was no appetite, which doesn't mean that in 6 months there might be an appetite. Maybe it should be tried again, and that would shift the burden of a lot of services that Tillamook County provides in the south end, because there are no incorporated cities. There's 7 this way, 0 this way, and so the priorities and the money for the county can get a little bit out of balance. And some people have said that, too much, but it's a valid point, but, but in terms of seeing it happen, I don't know if anybody in this room would be alive if it ever happened.
Well, we can't. It would definitely change county government, but the county cannot create incorporated cities, that those communities would have to do it themselves.
And Oceanside tried fairly recently, and first they didn't get enough data, and after that it got on the ballot and it failed. So you can say, you know, it at least was attempted.
Right. Well, my recollection was that was, I think that you brought up, right? Or not?
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
and I think it was in the sense of, well, that, if that happened, that would solve a lot of problems. It wasn't in the sense of, this is obviously a good thing to put in the strategic plan. So one possibility, given your point, Commissioner, is that, you know, this, you don't put that out there as something in the plan as a flashpoint for fighting the plan. But when you start doing the other stuff of, you know, what's our financial plan and other things like that, it comes up that, you know, some analysis is done of what level of service you're giving to those areas compared to other areas, you know, and you just, you know, little by little.
It would introduce another level of getting stuff done, for sure, and it would relieve the county with some things it does now, no question about that.
Right, and it would get into, potentially, that gets into, reduce the user fee part of things, you know, so here's all these services down there, how are they being paid for? Well, it's all coming out of general fund based on property tax. That's a problem. If it's with user fee based on analysis of cost basis, then maybe it's less of a problem. Yeah, Mike?
There is a capacity. The county can create its own subset of service using special districts, and you're the board of a special district. A lot of counties do that, and it's a good way to deal with the geographic dilemma. But it has to be integrated into your financial service system. You can back yourself into a corner there.
And it still has to be voter approved. Correct. These are special districts.
Some require, the financing may require voter, but the formation may not. It depends.
The formation does require voting, the service district is like your board over, special district would be a separate board. I think another thing that is hard with the people in places is from the community, from what some of what I hear is from the community's perspective, some people may disagree with things that we're doing that are not mandated services, but they're grant funded. So, which is good, you know, but there's also staff spending time, you know, getting grants or implementing grants and carrying out that work. So that does take resources, which may or may not be, their time may or may not be grant funded. So we have a lot of good work that we're doing, but it's grant funded, that there should be funding for some other work we do. Like the radio project, for example, we're thinking of how we're gonna fund that. And I know we're gonna get backlash because we don't have a lot of grant funding that we're contributing to it. And there, oddly enough, isn't a lot out there. And so yet we are spending money on other stuff that I'll just, you know, some people disagree with some of our social services work, but a lot of it is grant funded. And so from a perception perspective, it's not a battle, but something that we face, that people see what we're doing and what we're spending money on, but they don't know where the money is coming.
Yeah.
So as we dive into the mandated services, a lot of the mandated services, probably the majority, are not grant funded.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing all this tie back together because at that point ties back with finance and, you know, the budget process, and then communication and commitment to employees and the public. How do you communicate it with the public? You know, being able, what you said is not hard for people in this room to understand, but we forget it all the time. And when you're trying to explain it to the public, you know, unless you've got the simple version of it and you keep reminding them, then it's like, no, you're spending money on stuff that doesn't benefit me, and you're taking my tax dollars and you're spending it on stuff that doesn't benefit me.
Exactly.
It's not true, but that's the, so getting that message. Okay. I want to move on to this part of the exercise because we're close to that point. So here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. And I'm going to give you, to your great surprise, dots. And I'm going to give you two colors. I think red and blue. And I'm going to give you 5 of each. Red is, of all these things that are up here, here's ones that I think should be a priority for year 1. Okay, and blue is, these other things are still important, but we might not get to those until year 2 or later. And then what I want to ask you to do is think about your answers, maybe even write them down before you go up to the board. So you're not up at the board kind of looking over your shoulder of who's doing what. And then just put your dots up here. And I think what you will find, at least if it works out the way it usually has, is that there is a lot of agreement. And then when you see that, it's going to be a lot easier to get a focus on stuff. And then after we do that, when we see what's up here, then we can say, then I'm going to ask you the question again. Now that you see this, is there anything up here that should be up here that isn't up here? And how do we clarify that? And that will give us enough information then to kind of create, we won't be able to do it today, but we will take all this information back, kind of make a short list of stuff. We can see what comes out of the survey and then move on to the evaluation exercise, which I still have to talk to you about. But so for right now, just think of 5 and 5, and I'll get you some dots.
Good question. There's a number of these things that are underway. So does that matter? So like we have a revenue generation process, that's happening right now, or a planning process. So does it matter?
If it would be this. Here's how I would say that. Couple answers. First one is, at least one of the things up here should be something that is in the end, it's in your plan, should be something that is underway, maybe 2, and that you can complete in year 1 more or less successfully, so that you've got a win in your strategic, at least one win in your strategic plan. But on the other hand, if you're at the point where you've been working on this for 3 years, you know that the staff is supposed to bring a final report in 2 months, then I wouldn't put it up here because it's almost done. So I'll leave it to you to decide on that, and we can sort that stuff out later. So I'm going to ask you to do this pretty quickly because I want to be able to see the answer. So I'll get you 5. Debbie, is there a scissors here?
Can you take mine?
I think. No. Oh, yeah, yeah. Chris, you can do this.
Chris, that's Randy.
That's Randy.
Oh, excuse me, Randy. I'm sorry.
No, I'm Chris.
You got this.
Okay, I like your answers.
Wow.
Hey, you're one of the first.
Randy, I apologize. I thought I was standing behind Chris.
Oh, no, you're fine. And be wherever we need to be.
Okay. So, Red, Mike, can you help me do this?
Yeah.
Tear these.
Well, I would just let them out there and let them pick their own.
Well, if you just tear them into pieces, while they're thinking of just tearing them into pieces of 5. Okay.
Let's see you for helping.
I do try to be helpful. 5 of each.
Technically, if I tried to cut it in half, it didn't work. I had to take the whole thing.
No, just, you're getting 5.
I actually tried to cut it in half.
How many dots do we get?
And
10?
You get
We
10.
get 10 dots?
Yeah, you're gonna get 10 dots.
The red are due now, the blue are in the future.
Yeah, but still in the plan.
Sure.
The
In the
way
plan,
that-
but not year 1.
I think I've said this before, but it's been, what usually happens is people have, organizations have like 20 or 30 things they want to put in a plan. And some people don't want to give up on some of them. And so what you do is you give them kind of levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. And then in your annual reviews, you bring them back up again and you see what's there. And I will tell you, what sort of said in your annual review is something that we're not talking about. And
Something
then above something
emerge.
else.
It's probably faster, and it's actually through a state grant. You can use it for
So everyone
various
has
things,
some
but
except for
most
Sean
use it
and Rachel.
for salary,
And
because that's the
Aaron?
easiest.
Oh, and Commissioner Bell.
Because if you use it
We're
for
going
operating
once, there's
expenses.
Aaron,
all
Sean,
this-
there's yours.
And then the salary, you
That's
just.
those red ones down.
Yeah, and I think we're good on blue actually now.
Like
So
I
we
say,
just
who
need
knows?
red. Can you put that for
You guys-
Commissioner Bell, please?
Get some more
Thank you.
reds.
Next up is, I've got one, you guys,
How many reds you?
I think everybody's. Yeah, here, I'll just.
Somebody- Somebody's
Did you get red ones?
No, I didn't.
Who needs red? Danny? Dan?
I think we probably have enough there, Mike.
Okay.
Andy, do you need red?
Sure,
Okay.
So red's now, blue's later, right?
sure.
I wasn't paying attention.
Red now, blue later?
No,
They want to
let's put
stay
them all
with
up
you.
at the same time.
Right, but I mean, blue is this year, red is
Oh,
next
yeah,
year.
yeah, red is soon, blue is,
Red is now.
Red is now.
red is primary, urgent.
Okay, red is urgent. Red means go.
Red means go.
Okay, does anybody else need a red? Okay.
All good?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Right?
I gotta wait and see where Doug puts it.
Glares version on. Is that why you were glaring at me?
You sure you
Say something.
Say
something. You tell me. You tell me you're gonna be okay. I gotta believe you.
Oh, I got my blanket.
No, you tell me if it's really bad. Every day, see ya. Okay.
I turned it down because I was like, oh my God. Instead of being chilly, just stay awake, but
That's
I
right.
was beyond that.
That's part of it.
What's an annual SWAT?
Oh, SWAT.
Come here, I'll show you.
Strengths, weaknesses. It's a-
It's something that
It's an evaluation of,
It must be a red.
Keep you in line.
I think I'm normal.
evaluation of how well the county is doing.
Yeah, our annual SWAT.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you gotta go to the doctor.
Or for Randy.
that's what happens if you're not doing well.
Hmm. Too complicated.
I just want to complain.
Nobody likes people in places. That's just kind of sad. It needs a red dot by it, just because.
It's cute.
You could do it, or some of it arbitrarily and some of it is connected to the grants and things.
If you haven't been up there yet, let me encourage you to put at least one of your 10 dots on people and places somewhere. Doesn't have to be a red one. It could be a blue one, but I'd like to see at least one dot allocated.
They're running out of them because they're starting at that end, so they run out of their dots before they get to this side.
I think I put.
Just put another one.
You can't sell your dots to each other.
Yeah, do you want
Can I?
me to put one? for you?
Just go grab another sheet from over there though, if you want to scoot everything.
You've got all those red dots.
I haven't done any yet. I'm waiting to see what everybody else does. I'm a follower. I'm not a leader. Follow the group.
Richard, what do you suggest we do about people on the phone?
Ignore them. If they're not,
Um,
they don't get to participate.
Well, I think, what, are you gonna then send this all back out to us? I mean,
No, I'm gonna look at it and see if, and then I guess we can show it to people on the phone. And then the question I'm gonna ask is there anything that you think is more important than what I'll probably circle some of these and say, these have a lot of stuff around them. There's things that people think are more important.
Yeah, I think engage them in the conversation, I think is gonna be easiest. I think it would be really hard for them to try to choose dots from over there, because all of this is nowhere except on the wall that they can't see. So I'm sorry to the people online.
Okay. Go ahead. People online, if you are willing to type in your priorities, I can incorporate them later. But it's not a requirement, because what we're really trying to do, my objective here is eventually to get to somewhere around 15 items, that 15 to 20 that we're going to do more evaluation. And because we can't do any.
We still have. It's just no.
Financial software, is that to replace our financial officer?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, we got one. Okay, I looked back here and didn't see it. Oh, well.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
Not too bad.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's a spot left.
Same one. I look to the financial investment advisor, boy, that's quite a bit of reading.
Has everybody had time to come up to, is there somebody still waiting to come up the board, or are we good?
Just finishing those who are there.
Okay.
Here. Maybe put on the screen sharing so we can see anybody on who's online if they want to chat with us. What do you think?
That's what I'm doing, Martin.
I want to see. I can't see from over there.
I know it's easier when you step back just a little bit to see.
I think just to be sure, these are all votes for financial advisor, and this thing is part of this one down here. So that's 4 and 6. 6. I'm just going with the highest ranking ones here. Okay, so, but where there seems to be, and I'm seeing how many total people voted? 1, 2, 3, 9 people voted. 9 total. So here, if things add up to an 8 or a 9, there's a lot of consensus. So here's where we have a lot of consensus right here with 8 and 1. And here, oops, this one, I missed this one here.
Hey, Terry, would you please read when you say right here, which one you mean? Like, you have 8 votes.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So it was focused on revenue generation. Marlene had 8 votes. If you can read the words when you say it has 8 votes, so the people
Oh, yeah,
online
'cause
know.
they
which
can't see
one.
this. Okay.
They can't see
Yeah.
you.
So focus on revenue generations under governance, focus on revenue generating services. Got 8 8 number 1 votes and 1 number 2 vote. And similarly, under finance, it got 8 number 1 votes and 0 number 2 votes. So revenue generating services, fees, that kind of stuff gets a lot of points. And then under governance, the other one that made it highest, there were 2 together. One that was 3 and 3 for a total of 6 votes, and that was general evaluation of policies and procedures, and one that was 4 and 2, 6 votes, evaluation of cost savings initiatives. So those are the 3 out of governance that made it the highest. In finance, the highest was revenue generating fees and services, which is a duplication of the other one. So it's, I'm not sure, we can talk about whether there's a difference there. And then the financial advisor, investment advisor got 10 votes. And allocation of indirect cost got 6 second place votes. So those were the top 3 in finance. Under central services, the one that was by far the highest was integrated assessment of central services. And if you add to that assessment of needs, that was the needs of central services, you really are pretty close to 10 votes on that integrated assessment, which captures most of what's going on. So that seems like the one that comes out of there. And under people and places, there were 7 votes, 5 1s and a 2, and 2 2s for define and focus on mandated services. And then several got 3 that maybe could be consolidated somehow. So that's where we got to. And so let me just say, any comments from people on that, or the one way to talk about it is, if anybody has been hanging or has been waiting for things to happen and go, you know, I really haven't said this before, but I really think it would be a good idea if, you know, if this happened, say it now and we'll just add it to the list, and then people can look at it and see if any of them, when you say that, if anybody thinks that would dominate any of the things that we got up here right now. So any comments on this list?
What do you consider a mandate? Is it, if it's almost 50-50, like this one, and the investment advisor is 4-6, is that, how would you interpret that? That's kind of a split. One vote difference would have been 50-50.
Well, yeah, except that there are 10, I'm not saying that it is going to make it to a number 1. I'm just doing this right now to see which items are we going to do do a write-up on.
Okay.
And it's going to, one is here because 10 people think it's important, whether they think it's, and then you're going to get another chance to decide whether that's a year 1 or year 2 thing.
But if you didn't make the cut, then you fall off the list and you go from 15 or 20 down to your 8 or whatever it is.
Exactly. And I'm just looking for a way that in the time that we have available, we can't evaluate 20 or 30 different policies that you might have. And this is what I had hoped would happen, because this is what usually happens. It narrows down pretty quickly to, you know, 10 items. And it's not that we can't add more, we can. So I may drop down and say, when I'm doing the work, I may say, well, maybe I can find a way to commit to tie these, like maybe communication commitment here ties with, you know, transparency and conversation with the public, but this one didn't get any votes over here. So we'll see what that is. You know, because like right here, an evaluation of central services, this integrated evaluation is something that you want, but it may be that there are some things that we look at, like one I'll just bring up. I think that you should probably be doing something on your public communication process. You don't have a public, you don't have a Department of Public Communication, Public Relations Department, or anything like that. You don't, and you've got a website, but maybe it's not being kept updated completely. So there, there might be something that you could do on public communication in advance of this integrated assessment. I don't know, but if you have any of those ideas, let me know now, or what I'll probably do is put this list together in some format over the weekend, send it out to the leadership team and say, here's what happened from the people that were at the meeting. And this is where we're gonna head with this unless we hear something different, and give you guys a couple of days to do that. And then we'll wait until we hear from Paul about the individual open-ended questions to see if something else showed up. Or maybe I'll wait until I send you the memo once I have that from Paul. And then let you know that we're gonna try to evaluate these 12 items. And now I want to tell you what I mean by evaluate, if that's okay, because we're almost out of time. Okay, I sent you a memo called on the evaluation technique. And this is really pretty simple. It's what you would expect. I'm going to do it from memory, but I should probably pull up the evaluation memo so I don't skip something. Okay. This is the one called suggested criteria. So it's a 2-page memo, but what it says is, it's the thing that we think about are, that you want to think about is how complex are the actions, what number should be in the strategic plan, what are the topics of the actions. We've already done that with the focus group. So we think about all those things. And then what I want to do in order to give you what you need and sort of model evidence-based decision-making is to say, okay, we've been through a pretty detailed process here. It still is kind of qualitative. This is what kind of showed up based on people's gestalt of the whole thing. Can we do a little bit more thinking about, well, this is really a good idea or not? And what I hope to do is on one page, talk about what's the name of the action. So the name of the action is revenue generating services and fees. And then a description, 2 to 4 sentences. What's the issue or the need? What's the desired outcome? How would we try to address things? So we kind of give an overview of that. And then implementation, who would do it, by when, what level of budget and support, that kind of thing. And then the evaluation, which is to go beyond the description, pluses and minuses, define desired outcomes, like performance measures, likely level of effectiveness in achieving the outcomes, et cetera. And then having done all that, at the bottom of the page, give it a rating. 1 is highest, should be in any plan that you come up with and probably get done and probably be noted for year 1. 2 is secondary, should be in the plan, but might happen after the year 1 things. 3 is, if you decide to, this happened in one other jurisdiction we ran, you kept it in the plan list, but it was in a kind of an appendix list. And so that you didn't lose track of it because people felt pretty strongly about them. They just knew that they couldn't get to them right away. And 4 was, take it out of the plan. But I think we've already done 4 today, in a sense. There's some things here that are getting 1 or no votes that may not make the list. And so we would do that with somewhere between 12 and 20 actions. And I would try to send that to this group before our meeting on July 15th. Whether I can pull that off or not, sure, at some level I think I can. And so that's how things would go. And then you would have that in advance and we would come back and then say, okay, are we decided or not? And the other point that I want to make is we still haven't decided for sure. Rachel and I communicated a little bit, but is this the proper level of leadership team involvement on this? And it is, I'm fine with it in the sense of you're doing the decision making, I'm just doing sort of the staff work. Or does the leadership team is it important, say, for example, to break into subcommittees to then deal with this and go through it in more detail, which is also possible. But I don't think that's my decision to make now. I think we wait until see where we are. And in July 15th, if everybody says, you know, this is the way to go, then these would be the things that we would start to write up to put into the plan. And then we really have everything we need at that point to write the plan. If not, then there's a longer process that you might go through to polish these up a little bit before we go to the plan. Is that so? With that, we are at, thank you. We are at 12 o'clock. Is anybody have any comments about that? Or are you okay with
Where we're going?
Okay, well, what a good group.
Crazy.
Thank you for getting there.
Barry, can I make one comment before we all leave?
Yeah.
I hear this reference a lot, and I kind of heard it today from an analyst. People keep thinking you're a small operation. You're not. There's 24 million companies, private companies in the United States. The average size of that organization is 5 people. There are a hell of a lot of organizations that are a lot smaller than you are. You are, if you take and rank yourself in terms of the counties, you're right in the middle in terms of size. And if you rank your organization against private companies, you're in the top 10%. So the organizational design that you're dealing with has to be responsive to a vast, big, complex corporation. It is not a mom and pop shop.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
We're on it.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks for the comments.